My name is Tiffany Arnold, and I first heard about Moment of Truth. A girlfriend was talking to Kevin, and she had said how she felt free and how her marriage started to get better, and I wanted the same thing for my story. My experience during my sessions have been good. Most of them are online because I don't live close, so I can't see them in person. But I really like the flexibility and how comfortable I feel to be vulnerable and honest. And I sometimes overshare, and they're okay with that, and I don't feel judged. I can just be myself and be honest, and that is really helpful for me in a session. A specific moment of truth that impacted me was when I realized that I was judging myself and judging other people's emotions and thoughts. And once I understood the truth and the concepts about the freedom that I could have in my life, in my relationships, from knowing that I didn't have to judge or condemn myself for how I was feeling, it was like a weight lifted off of my shoulders, and I could just walk in truth. And it actually freed me up to allow space for other people to just experience what their experience. And my favorite thing is I always say, like, you own that and I own this. So that really helped me not to judge, and it's just neutral. So I always am saying now, thoughts and emotions are neutral. It's just how we behave. And to practice these in real time, like I can really grasp, like I'm getting triggered. What is true? Even in real time when I'm in like a disagreement with a friend or my kid or my husband, I can step out and notice that I'm getting triggered, stop and think, I don't have to judge them. I don't have to judge myself. And the freedom that I have in that has really allowed me to grow in my relationship with God, because I'm understanding more of the truth that's setting me free and the taking thoughts captive. That really, I just understand really what God was saying about that. And that's really freed me to allow space for my husband to grow and me to grow at different paces, because we're different people. And Moment of Truth really helped me allow space for our marriage to heal, and we're doing so much better, which I really am so excited for and happy that I learned this. I just wish I learned it sooner. The most important thing that I have learned, how God has designed each one of us so differently, and to embrace and value somebody else's experience. We're all on a different journey, and once I believed that there was nothing wrong with me and that I had learned that I have authority and value in Jesus, and so does the other person that I'm getting triggered by, to learn that God loves them too, and to allow space for them to respond even if it's triggering me. That has helped me parent better. That's helped my marriage grow and heal, because when I was reacting and like freaking out or screaming, sweating, or shutting down, that like fight, flight, freeze, fawn whole thing, now when I notice that I'm doing that, or my child or my husband or a friend, I can just give them space, hear them with an open heart, without judgment, without condemnation, and just, it's almost like the glory of God is just coming into this space, because I'm not carrying that weight. Because when we judge and condemn other people, it's so cloudy, and that's where I feel like the enemy can come in and steal, kill, and destroy relationship, because we're like getting attacked by our own emotions and thoughts. But the freedom and the truth that God gives by his word, The truth does set you free. When you're not owning something that doesn't belong to you, when you're allowing that person to share and you're not condemning them for what they own, so much healing can happen. There was so much freedom and healing that happens from understanding these concepts, and I've grown so much more as a person and in my relationship with God because of what I learned from Moment of Truth. I was at a point where I walked in people pleasing and I walked in suppressing my emotions, and I wasn't even really being honest with myself very often because I was always shaming myself, condemning, judging myself. And I was desperate for help. I just lived with this religiosity, and it was just snuffing out some of the truths of who God says I was. And I wasn't having boundaries, and I wasn't speaking up for myself. And I was desperate for help with my marriage. I thought, I can't live like this anymore. I can't live in a marriage where I constantly feel like I'm not allowed to be myself. I was crying all the time. I actually, like I couldn't function. I felt like I just hated everything and I didn't know how to survive. And when I heard that a separation was possible because you can't keep walking in life at your own expense. And actually, God has called us to be honest and be truthful. And I wasn't, because like the whole idea of me not wanting to keep my marriage, I just was ready to get rid of it because I felt like I was dying inside. And I loved my husband and I loved my family, and I did not want that to happen. And when I talked to Kevin, it was in our first session that he said that God does not want me to be living that way. I wasn't even walking in freedom. I wasn't walking in truth because I can't expect somebody else to know my truth if I'm not telling them. And I felt like I wasn't allowed to share how I was really feeling. And learning these concepts and biblical truths, I learned that it was my responsibility to be honest and set a boundary. So then I practiced setting a boundary with my husband. And so after I was practicing this, which, I mean, a lot of grace for myself, and thank you, Jesus, for my husband who's putting up with my crazy. But like the pain and shame of knowing that I didn't want to be married anymore. I didn't want to go down that road. I didn't know what to do, and I was just looking for answers. And then when I met with Kevin and met through his ministry of Moment of Truth, I learned from him that I could stand up for myself. Like I had permission, that it was okay to set a boundary. And he was telling me about this death dance we were doing. And this death dance of me getting triggered and he's getting triggered. And you can't heal when two people are like, trigger, 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 trigger. It's like the wound, you're just slicing each other open. And it's like your heart can't heal because you don't feel safe. Like your physical body doesn't feel safe. So once I realized that my pain was coming from my own self-condemnation and my judgment and, feelings and triggers from my husband just walking into a room. When Kevin came in there and was like, this is what's happening. You're dancing around this circle and you're getting triggered. And what you can do is come back and repair. And the repair is where the healing begins, where we can both sit now and say, I was triggered by this. When you said this, I felt this. And now we can say, was that true? Like what you were feeling by the trigger, is that true? And now we can heal because we're understanding and practicing these concepts of knowing, oh, like I was just triggered. Or, oh, I just condemned you. And so now we're saying these things to each other, and like we can laugh about it now, well, sometimes, but this is something that I believe every marriage, every relationship, I think this kind of concepts and understanding will help free people of condemnation of self so that your soul and spirit can open and you can understand that you are valuable. What you think and feel is true to you. So stop judging and condemning yourself or your spouse or your child because they are free to experience that. But it's the behavior and the boundaries that come with that. And in love. And the truth really does set you free. Like, why is when he comes in the room, I'm like, like freaking out and yelling, getting mad, and then Kevin's like, it's because you're triggered. I'm like, oh, well, what are you feeling? What is the feeling? Mm-hmm. So then identifying what I was feeling, that's a lot. That's a lot of work. Yeah. That's hard work. Nobody teaches that. Nobody teaches that you can look at your emotion and say, what am I feeling? And is it true? Oh, well, what I really like when I'm in a session is that I can come to Kevin with whatever I'm triggered by or freaking out with, and he can tell me a story so I can understand what's going on. And to get a real life example from another person, I mean, then it takes like the weight off of myself so I can just understand that I'm not the only one going through this. It's not just me. And then he says, I did this in my marriage, or I did this with my family, and this is what was happening. So then he's teaching me the concepts that he had to learn. My favorite one was when he said he would have to go outside and just to calm down. I know it takes like 20 minutes to like re-regulate your body. So he would go outside and say, I don't own that. I don't own that. I don't own that. And so that was my favorite thing, that he was giving me kind of tools that he did so that I could do that in my life. So then now I say to my husband or my kids, like, you own that. Like, I don't own that. And I think it's funny, but I don't know if they think it's funny, but that's my favorite thing. So I'll go, like, walk away. I'm like, I'm triggered. And then I, like, walk out of the room, and then they're like, okay, just let her go over there and calm down. And then I'm like, oh, they own that, and I can breathe. And then I come back, and it's emotions and thoughts are neutral and all the things. I mean, there's nothing that compares to what I've learned in Moment of Truth. I was in years of therapy with secular counselors, biblical counselors, pastors, online programs. Nothing has helped me grow and learn and understand and have tools in my back pocket that I can practice when I leave a session. I feel like Moment of Truth gives you tools that when you're leaving your session, you're going home and now it's, good luck to figure it out. But then when I get triggered, when I have an emotion, then I'm like, oh, I learned this. And so then I can apply what I learned in real time. And no one else was giving me tools. Other counselors, like their way, and I did learn a lot with other counselors and pastors, but I didn't really get tools. I got a lot of me sharing and then them saying, well, try it, this, or journal. But I never got a tool that I could practice because I always wanted to call my counselor right away when I left and was like, help me. Like, now what do I do? And I would panic and think that I need to go back to them to get help. But with Moment of Truth, you learn some tools, you understand a concept, and now you can apply it. And then when I think that thought, oh, I need to make an appointment with Kevin, I need to call him, and I need him to help me, I'm freaking out, I'm triggered, because when we're triggered, we're just like, our whole body and nervous system is freaking out. And with Moment of Truth, I can take what I learned from him and like, oh, I can do this. I'm triggered, and is what I'm feeling true? Am I shaming myself? Am I condemning myself? Am I condemning another person? And that just opens your eyes to walk in and practice this truth and this concepts. And I've never grown so much spiritually and in my marriage. I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe how Moment of Truth is so different and why other practices don't teach this in their sessions, because they have gone through all this schooling and all this work, and I think it's beautiful, but there's something missing. They're missing giving somebody a tool that they can go home with and practice and then come back and then talk about the death dance. I think this would be really beautiful and healthy to be taught to other counselors, psychologists, pastors. I think that this kind of the Moment of Truth concepts could be taught at churches and schools. I think that we're missing a whole level of how the human mind works when we're triggered and the behaviors that come from when we are walking in a lie, when we're not believing something that's true about ourselves or another person. And once we realize the truth, then we're free to heal. Everything that I learn in Moment of Truth, I'm so excited that I really just can't keep my mouth shut about it because I feel so free. I feel like even though my life is often chaos and my marriage isn't perfect, my kids aren't perfect, I'm not a perfect mom, I'm not a perfect wife, but I feel free. I feel like when I'm not condemning myself, I'm just, like I can like walk in life and share this with other people, because then I'm seeing like, like you're just getting triggered. And if you understand the concept of, you don't have to condemn your child, you don't have to react. You can say like, this is what's true. So I love when my friends that come to me with counseling questions or with concerns or prayer, if they just are freaking out in their life, I have something that I've learned that's tangible and applicable and neutral and healthy and freeing and biblical that they can apply it to their life. And now they're applying it to their life and they're seeing like, I was just judging myself. I was just condemning myself. So any chance I get, all my girl nights, like when we go have Taco Tuesday, we just end up talking about concepts and how to apply this in our life. Because we all want to be free. Like we don't want to live in condemnation and like feeling stuck. And not everyone can, afford therapy after therapy after therapy, and they're not learning anything. This is applicable. This is tangible. So any chance I get when someone comes to me with just they're in a hard time, they'll give me a call and say, my marriage isn't going well, or I found out my husband's cheating on me, or my child is suicidal. Like we can use these Moment of Truth concepts and biblical concepts and just apply it in real time, and we can see, and I have just witnessed like so much healing in my relationships that they want that too. So they're like, Tiff, what did you do? Like, what's happening to me? I'm like, well, I learned this and this and this. And the truth will set you free, and just them sharing that with their families. I just think there's a wave of God exposing the lies that we have believed, and Moment of Truth is a fire starter. It is kind of good to expose the lies of the enemy. I love to share how Moment of Truth concepts have freed me. Even though my life isn't perfect, even though my marriage isn't perfect, I don't condemn myself and others the way that I did, and I feel like I can breathe. I feel happy. I feel excited. I have more room to minister to other people when I'm not like attacking myself all the time or other people. That's just how the enemy works, right? Like he comes in and he's just distracting you with all these lies and these emotions that are not true about who God says that we are. And the Moment of Truth concepts, when you apply them to yourself, you will begin to walk in freedom. You cannot not walk in freedom once you have learned and understood the concepts that Moment of Truth has to give.